ลังจากงานเสวนาดิฉันได้มีโอกาสนั่งคุยกับคุณโทนี่แบร์อดีตผู้นำสหราชอาณาจักรนะคะถามหลายเรื่องค่ะทั้งเรื่องค่าตอบแทนปัญหาทางการเมืองในซีเรียซึ่งคุณแบร์ยืนยันว่าไม่ค่อยอยากจะคุยเรื่องนี้เท่าไหร่นะคะอยากจะคุยเรื่องการปรองดองมากกว่าค่ะ
Mr. Blair, you were here the second time in less than 2 years. What brought you here?
I came because I was invited to come to this conference, and the issue of reconciliation is one I've worked on in many different places in the world, not least in Northern Ireland, and of course now in the Middle East peace process.
Your achievement is in Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland to talk with Sinn Féin group. What was the most obstacle then?
The most difficult thing is you've got to get a constitutional framework that people regard as fair. So we had to make big changes in Northern Ireland around the judiciary, power sharing, rule of law questions, police. We had a whole series of institutional and constitutional questions we had to resolve. And, we had to try and come out with proposals on these things and for things like amnesties and releases of prisoners and so on that were seen as fair. Now that's very difficult to do, easy to say, very difficult to do. But that's what we spent a lot of time on, getting that framework for the future right. You'll never persuade people about the past. That's one thing we learned. There's no point in trying to persuade people that they were wrong and you were right about the past. What you can do is establish a shared basis for the future.
What should the Thai government do in terms of reforming council, because they have gathered all political figures, all leader or previous prime minister in Thailand to have open dialogue? Do you think it's on the right track to have open dialogue, having it been broadcast on television?
I think it requires a mixture of things. Obviously you've got to have public dialogue and consultation, and that's very important. I also think there are private conversations that can be important too. My experience of peace processes and reconciliation is that, these things are very difficult. People have been very strongly opposed to each other. There's a lot of bad feeling on both sides. You've got to work in personal as well as political ways to overcome that.
You wrote in your article on the 1st of September in Sunday's Time that military intervention in Syria is bloody, but it's worse to step aside. Why do you really believe so?
I think probably, as I said in there, I'll talk about Syria another time, really, because it's an issue to talk about at length, not just in a short clipped answer. But the views I set out there are views I've held obviously for a long time.
But Syria is very important at this very world juncture, and you got voted yes in the British Parliament during that time when you went into war in Iraq. If you were Prime Minister David Cameron at this time, what would you do?
Well, I think if I've got any advice to give him, I'll give it back home. I don't mean to be difficult about it, but Syria is a very complicated and a very sensitive question right now, and if I'm going to start talking a lot about it, I'd like to do it in a different forum.
Briefly, do you like to say something? What is the similarities or differences for Syria and Iraq before?
No, I don't think I really want to get into that today. By the way, in any of these places in the Middle East, these issues of reconciliation are going to be fundamentally important. After the fighting stops, people are going to have to find a way of coming together. And the problem is you can't have a political solution until violence stops. So that's very obvious. But if you forgive me, I prefer to talk about what I'm here to speak about in Thailand today.
How has political division in Thailand affected national reconciliation from your perspective? Not only national politics, but also it affected the violence in the south of Thailand.
Well, you've got two separate questions. One is very specifically around Thai politics and reconciliation, and then you've had an issue with the Muslim population too. And in respect of that issue with the Muslim population, I think the lessons are very clear from around the world as to how to try and bring about reconciliation between people and respect between people of different faiths. and it's important, obviously, to make sure that some of the radicalization that's happened elsewhere in the world doesn't spread here. I think on the political part of reconciliation, the reason it's so important for Thailand is that until people feel your politics is in a stable place, in other words, the normal give and take in democracy is established, then obviously it's a matter of concern from the outside. But as I say, the potential opportunities for Thailand are huge, and Thailand could be a major regional power for sure, and possibly even a global power if it gets
global power.
Well, the UK's still a global power with a population under less than yours, and you're in a position where the natural resources of the country, the position of the country. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't do that.
If we look at the world economy at the moment, the UK has just said it's out of recession. Do you think Thailand is on the right track, or Asia is on track to be engine of the world economy?
Yes, I think that there are tremendous opportunities out here, and if you look at your growth rates in Thailand over the past couple of decades, the country's come an enormous way. It's one of the reasons why, when you look at where you are on, you have world leaders in hard disk manufacturing, in auto manufacturing, in tourism. Thailand's culture is rich. Its people are, of interest to the world, and you're in a region, partly through ASEAN and partly obviously with the economy of China, where a lot of the growth in the future is going to come. So that's why, in a way, to sort out political differences is so important, because the potential of the country is enormous, but you need to get the politics straightened out in order to exploit that potential properly.
There's been report among local newspapers raising the issue that you are here because of you were paid by the government, but you said in the conference that you are here because of invitation. So what's really the case?
There was never any question of a fee for this. So I've come, I speak often, by the way, without a fee. There are some times, obviously, when I will speak and be a paid speaker, as many presidents and former prime ministers do, but there was never any question of having a fee. So these local stories are wrong, but, I get used to these types of newspaper story.
And you are the one who make a decision to get fee or not?
Well, it was never raised with me. There was never any question of doing this. It was always there. I was always coming because it was an important issue, and I do lots of speeches around the world, by the way, on this topic without any fee at all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Blair.